Really excited to be here. It's a privilege to be here among this fantastic HCI community who've been pushing the boundaries of HCIs for many, many years, and to be among these young, new generation of HCI enthusiasts who are gonna build the future of HCI. So I'm excited to talk to you about my current work on harnessing data for social good or social impact, empowering communities through visualization and social computing. As Michael said very correctly, my pronunciation is Narges Mahyar, my name pronunciation, and currently I'm at Harvard as a Harvard Radcliffe Fellow, but I'm at UMass Amherst, and I'm co-founder and co-director of HCI Viz Lab at UMass. Speaking of the lab, Ali Sarwad and I established the lab in 2020 with only 2 PhD students. And I'm so proud to see the lab has been growing with having more than 24 active members and many alumni. And we focus on research on socially impactful technologies that empower data-informed decision-making. You can see the website for more information on our projects and people and publications. The structure of my talk for today is I'll start by presenting a short introduction about my work, motivating my work and where I am and what I'm doing. And then I'll briefly talk about a few selected projects. And finally, I'll describe my vision for future work and a call to action. And with that, I hope I can inspire you to join our team to make this vision to a reality through collaboration. In terms of research, we are a very interdisciplinary research lab. We conduct both fundamental as well as applied research at the intersection of visualization, social computing, design, and more nowadays applied machine learning and AI. However, HCI, or human-centered computing, serves as this overarching principle that shapes all of my work within a very deeply human-centered framework. And with our work with community, we extend the human-centered computing to community-centered computing when we try to understand the needs and challenges of community and design and build technology for them. In terms of domain area, I've been working on urban planning and placemaking, building tools and technology for bringing people to these very complex matters. I have built several partnerships with city or town officials and groups across Vancouver, British Columbia, to San Diego, Amherst, and nowadays Boston. Also, text visual analytics is another domain that I've been working on, and financial data analysis. And nowadays, more and more on building technology for bringing awareness and education around climate change. To give you an idea of where I'm coming from and the research areas that I've been working on, here are the main directions of my research with some selected work. So visual analytics was the focus of my PhD, where you might be able to look at those small thumbnails and see large interactive surfaces where I was building technology and visual analytic tools, enabling a group of experts and analysts go through complex data and solve it collaboratively and more effectively. And nowadays, we're still working with visual analytics, but with the focus of increasing the coverage of data and basically balancing and mitigating biases in the analysis process. Okay, until a month before, I used to say during the past 9 years, but now I can say during the past decade, I've been and shifted my focus on addressing complex socio-technical problems. And my team and I have been building and studying what I call community-centered tools for increasing public engagement in massive civic decision-making processes. And today, I'm mostly going to focus on this line of work, but I'm happy to chat offline about any other line of my work. Another line of my work is what I like to call visualization for empowerment. And by that, I mean building visualization tools and making data visualization and analysis accessible for empowering a broader audience, including the public, the general public, to understand and explore the data that is increasingly part of their lives. And we've seen it during the COVID pandemic and many other situations where people need visualization to make informed decisions, personally or collectively. Speaking of socio-technical problems, as Don Norman and Staper write in this article, socio-technical problems are complex, multifaceted problems that are difficult to solve due to their interconnectedness and shifting natures, making them very difficult to sort out cause and effect and solve. Examples are systems such as healthcare or transportation or governmental policy and environmental protection and sustainability. They're also known as wicked problem. Anybody has heard of wicked problem before? Lovely. In this classic article, Rittel and Weber in 1973 coined the term wicked problem. And they talked about, complex problems such as planning problems and their wickedness and how and why they're difficult. So they defined 10 different characteristics of wicked problems, but mainly they are unstructured. They're difficult to sort out cause and effect, and therefore they are more difficult than other type of problems to solve. They're cross-cutting, meaning they have a lot of overlapping stakeholders. And why it becomes more difficult to solve? Because the stakeholders come from different background, different objectives, different orientation, and therefore it becomes a very messy, a very conflicting space to be able to solve a problem. And they're relentless. They can't be solved once and for all. Whatever decision that you make makes one group unhappy while it makes the other group happy. It's very, very difficult. So one way to tame wicked problem is to engage all the stakeholders in community. So community engagement is really the key because it helps to raise awareness. A lot of time, the community itself do not have awareness or education about those problems, and it causes a lot of tension and friction. To tap into their local knowledge, they have a lot of valuable knowledge that the policymakers and decision makers don't know. And then ultimately, it encourages collaboration and co-creation among all of these stakeholders to come up with viable solution. There's a big problem here, though. Community engagement has been a problem for over a century, especially in the US. So in this article, Ines and Mahyar talk about how conventional public engagement, especially in the US, and especially public hearings, review, and comment procedures, not only do not meet the most basic goals for public participation, but they're also counterproductive. They cause anger, mistrust, and even revolt. Anybody has been to a public meeting before? Yes, a handful. As you might have seen, similar to this picture, only a handful of people get to stand up and raise their voice and bring their comments. But many others who have already invested coming to these meetings do not get to share their ideas and feedback, which is a big problem. So I want to mention that there are so many different challenges around public engagement and public participation. In this talk, I refer to some of the main or grand challenges that my research has been trying to address. First is enhancing engagement of the participants, the ones who are already engaged enough to make it to a public meeting or workshop, but there is no means to further and more meaningfully engaging them. Engaging reticent participants, again, the ones that are actively engaged, who made it to those public hearings, but we just spoke, during those town hall meetings, they don't get to speak up and they remain silent. Scaling participation, which has been the very big quest of mine, how we can scale participation beyond those white, affluent, educated populations who are usually part of these meetings. And then another big and more underexplored problem is how to record and analyze these, what I call precious public inputs, and utilize them in the actual decisions at the end. These are the selected projects that I'm going to go over briefly today, and each of them is trying to at least address one of the problems that I just mentioned. So let's start with UDCO spaces for enhancing engagement of participants. UDCO spaces is short for Urban Design Collaborative Spaces. And as you can see through this picture, it's a tabletop-centered, multi-display environment for engaging the public in the very complex matter of urban design. This was a long-term interdisciplinary project between computer science and architecture department at UBC, where I worked as a postdoc. As a postdoc coming to this very new field, I started delving into the literature to understand urban studies and the computational support. And the more I delved, the more I found there is a lack of tool support during these design charrettes or design, active participation meeting, especially for integrating data and visualization of information to enable people to understand more tangibly what they're talking about, to employ those interactive modes to engage people more interactively, and then employing social and peer learning, which we all know is very important for bringing people to these areas. And the absence of visualization and computer support tools for planning and public engagement marked a turning point in my career 10 years ago that makes and inspired a shift in my focus towards the development of tools for this domain. Therefore, our research questions were around how to build collaborative technology and visualization techniques to engage a diverse set of stakeholders to foster collaboration and co-creation among them, and more importantly, to increase their understanding of the impact of their design choices. So here is the tabletop interface. At each corner, there is a case bar where user can explore different buildings, which they call them cases in urban planning. And they can get their information whenever they're ready with their choice. They can simply drag and drop it on an interactive map on the table. They can position it where they want. And then the spatial results are displayed in sort of 3D on a project on the wall, to enable them to see a better, in a better way. And there are handheld devices that are connected to this ecosystem that enables first remote interaction with the table with a wall display. And we also built a visualization dashboard that allows people to choose and drag and drop in a very simple interaction manner the metrics or indicators of urban design that matters and is more important for the team. And it's all basically, as you might be able to see, dynamically change as people adding more to their design of the map on the table. We conducted a formal evaluation, which I'm not going through the detail, but we compared our digital tool versus a formal paper-based version, and we tried to make them as similar as possible in terms of the map, the highlights, the building information that we gave to each team member, and so on. And some interesting results in a very summary format. One very interesting observation was that the tabletop and this digital ecosystem increased the equity of access to design materials. What do I mean? In a paper-based version, we saw some people guarding their design just like this, because either they had more knowledge of urban design than other team members, or they didn't want anyone to mess with their perfect design. The time was short. Versus in the digital form, it was so easy to do and redo and to see and discuss together as a team and finally come up with a decision. As one of the participants said, having this tabletop got every stakeholder involved so they can make changes themselves, see those changes right away, which promotes collaboration. Another observation was the multi-display environment catalyzed discussion. We observed many instances where the team member were looking at the wall and the 3D, explaining and going through how this neighborhood is going to look like with these new builds. And one said, I definitely really liked how everything was synced, especially with regards to 3D iPad and table itself. But most importantly, one of our goals in this project was to bring the ability of visualization to enhance people's visual analytics, and also to add a personal space in this very shared, space, collaborative space, to enable people to basically look at the data in their own time via adding those iPads to these ecosystem. And as you might be able to go to see through this picture, we saw many instances when people were looking and checking their metrics on the iPad, and they were adjusting their design accordingly. And based on our results, the digital group came up with more informed decisions afterwards due to having this, analytical dashboard. One said, having indicators in real time definitely altered how we approached the project. We could see the larger impact. So in terms of implication, there were a lot of implication of this project. One was this multi-touch and natural interaction, which just drag and drop and rotate and zoom and all of this. It was really, really successful for broadening participation and engagement. So it can definitely be used in other domains such as education, and whenever you want to bring a broader audience to understanding and working with technology. We implemented this in 3 different workshops in Vancouver with 83 people ranging from older adults, and we had visitors from high schools. All of them learned how to use the system in less than 5 minutes, which was a really, really good news for such a complex tool. And then having that personal space within a shared workspace was really, really the key and important, because the version before didn't have the personal space, and we saw different results. We also wrote this paper. This is a short workshop paper, but we talk about form factor matters and all of other design criteria for building multi-display environment, from the angle to size to rotation to everything. Also, one very interesting matter for me, coming from visualization perspective, was how using those infographics that you show very briefly during that demo was helpful for conveying sustainability metrics. So here's another picture of those. We had a team of multimedia design students over summer who designed all of these infographics in the middle of those donut charts to be able to convey a lot of these metrics without much labeling. And it was very, very effective. It was so effective that it sparked my interest to run actual experiments and scientific study to understand whether or not infographics hinder or doesn't hinder or maybe improve people's understanding. Because there has been some connotations, negative connotations around infographics in the visualization community. And the good news was the infographic helped people to envision the topic better without sacrificing understanding, comparing to the actual abstract visualization. So with that, I'm going to move to the next project, which is Community Click for engaging reticent participants. And it's a system for capturing and reporting community feedback from town halls to improve inclusivity. We called it Community Click because we basically brought iClickers to town hall with one important modification, and that was making the feedback in real time. So you don't have to poll people they can bring their feedback at any given time. And this is based on the success factor of iClickers in education, which has shown to increase students' engagement with a material. This was the work of my former PhD student, Mahmoud Jassim, along with 2 master's students, Amy Zong and Ali Sarwat. So again, back to our picture in town hall meetings, there are common methods still in the US for hearing from the public, understanding their requirements, needs, and issues. Ideally, you would want all the attendees in such meetings to bring their comments and ideas and suggestions and questions, but only a handful get to bring their ideas due to fear of public speaking, fear of confrontation, language barrier, shortage of time, and so many other barriers. Furthermore, the organizers struggle to facilitate the meeting and capture attendees' feedback at the same time. And they have to run the meeting, manage discussion, collect data, sometimes resolve conflict. And as a result of all of those activity, a lot of time those precious public input gets lost during this process and doesn't get utilized in the actual decisions. With that, our research questions were focused on addressing these two problems. How do we empower attendees, in particular those silent fractions, to express their opinion, and how can we enable organizers to come up with more comprehensive reports at the end? So here are some different set of eye clickers that we use. As you can see, we have labeled them. The blue one was for organizers to say, here's a main issue, or here's a new idea that the community are bringing and we haven't been thinking about. And the gray one for the attendees to say, I agree, or I disagree, or I am unsure about anything that you're talking about right at this moment, Narges, or this is important, or I'm confused. And all of these were based on formative studies that we've done with both communities. And we created the iClicker recorder to basically record all the input in real time. And then here, I want to show you the workflow of Community Click, which basically we gather all of the meeting attendees through iClickers as well as organizers. And we use off-the-shelf tools to automatically record and basically transcribe all of these meeting notes so nothing gets lost. We have a long list of meeting notes. And then we put them all together to what I call augmented transcript, because it's augmented with all of these feedback from attendees and organizers. And then we run topic extractions, and we build a very specific text summarizer, and we feed all of these input into our visual analytic interface, which offers a wide range of features for exploring this meeting content and generating comprehensive report. So here's how it looks like. As I said, it has several components. They're all interlinked and interactive and provides a wide array of features. Here are some main features. For example, the organizer's tags can be used as filters. For example, you're an organizer, you want to go through this very long, lengthy meeting report. You say, I want to look at main issue. And by checking the main issue from that list, you basically filter and just see the main issue. We also built this timeline, which shows the basically distribution of organizers' tags over time. For example, you're like, I remember towards the end of that meeting, there was a main issue, so you can click on that red dot at the end of the timeline to get to that exact issue you're thinking of. And then this is the augmented meeting transcript that provides the meeting discussion segment with associated text, organizers' tags, as well as distribution of attendees' meeting for that chunk of meeting notes. And then finally, this is the interactive feedback-weighted summary that we built and acts as an anchor for them to explore all of these meeting notes. We deployed Community Click in a town hall meeting in Amherst on issues of parking in downtown, and there were 33 attendees. We gave them a 5-minute tutorial of how to use the iClickers, and we handed them iClickers, and we surveyed them at the end. Here, I want to show you the results. So first, we asked them if they feel comfortable in general, not with clickers, to share their thoughts during public meeting. And as you can see, people were split. Those people at the top felt at ease to speak up and to bring their ideas to the meeting. They had no problems. And there were some people at the bottom left that didn't feel comfortable sharing. And then we asked them if iClicker helped them to share their thoughts. And here's where we saw a major shift. Watch. those people who felt comfortable and easy speaking didn't hate or dislike iClicker that much. Some even liked to have both channels to verbally speaking, but also, providing some feedback. But here's where you can see the major shift. You see those people at the very bottom who didn't feel comfortable speaking found to be very much empowered by this technology. And this were the exact group we were building the tool. One of the comments from attendees on the survey was, "Your tool empowered me to share my feedback silently," which became part of the paper, of course. And then there are a lot of implications of this work that we talked in the discussion in this work, from how these low barrier technology are important for bringing people to democratic decision making, to building inclusive platforms, and so on. And we also talk about anonymity and privacy and so many other issues that I want to just, for the sake of time, move to the next project.
But just a quick clarification. Was there any kind of real-time feedback to the people who were using the clicker, or was it sort of a silent signal?
Thank you. I have it here. I didn't want to, yes, augmenting with more real-time component. Due to a lot of research that shows if you show the results right away, you can bias people. If you say like, 70% are in disagreement with whatever Narges is talking about, it could just change the room temperature. Also, we decided not to show anything, and we didn't want to complicate or basically distract people from listening to the speakers in the room or the town hall meeting, like topic, whatever. But we are talking about how or we might augment it with more real. There was no real time.
I see. So the changes were entirely based on sort of a one-way communication where they just had the clicker, they were pushing things, but they didn't get any feedback on it.
No,
but they
still
didn't. Felt more comfortable doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very good question. And the journey of Community Click didn't end here. We built a virtual version of it, and we deployed it in CSCW conference, which is one of the conferences in our field, with 700 people in the town hall. And the organizer of the town hall tweeted this image afterwards. And they were like, just when you think it's all going well. As you can see, about 70% of people were confused about matters which were discussed. And then, of course, afterwards, the pandemic hit, and the town of Amherst, which we deployed the tool, were very interested in deploying the system, and they were like, "Can you build a virtual version?" And we were, "Yes, we already built a virtual version. Here you go, use it." And here's, of course, a picture from one of those, deployment. They use it, which showed to basically increase and tripling the engagement during those Zoom meetings. But of course, they didn't accept it right away. We worked with them 6 months very closely to to change the system in the way that is easier for them as non-technical people to go over all of the meeting. We even added the video to this, tool, and a stream of visualization to be able for them. We also added the chat message and a lot of other features that we talk about in this short workshop paper recently. Okay, next, that big question of how do we scale participation? Community Crit was inspired by crowdsourcing methods to engage the public at scale and enable them to improve and evaluate ideas rather than just merely proposing ideas. And this was part of my postdoc project at UC San Diego with Stephen Dow. To give you some background about other tools for public participation, this is Plan Your Place, which was built for everyday citizen with this easy-to-use map and chat, features. But the authors themselves found it, after evaluation, hard for everyday citizen to understand and use the system. There are also crowdsourcing tools, which are fairly easy for the public to use. For example, this one is called Wiki Survey, which has been deployed in many cities like Chicago and New York and so on. And it basically asks a pairwise question and give people ability to bring their own comments or ideas. However, research shows that people are tired and fed up with government asking them about what do you want, rather than more meaningfully engage them in making and building those plans. So with those, our research questions were around how can we create a system for activities beyond opinion polling that captures quality feedback in a short amount of time, knowing that citizens don't have a lot of time to spare for these matters. And we began by attending a local design workshop and planning meetings. We took notes during a street tour, attended the workshop. My team is here. I'm actually sitting on the table, and my team is there. My intern student, Michelle Ng, who's now a PhD student here, was there actually recording all of the conversations as well. And based on all of these formative work, we built Community Crit, which is available online. And in order to lower the barrier for the public, it works on a variety of devices, including smartphones. And it starts by giving people an idea about the placemaking challenge that they're talking about. In this case, we were partnering with a team in San Diego to redesign San Diego's downtown neighborhood. Then it gives a short background about the design problem. We focus on this key intersection in downtown San Diego. And then it structures a process where participants choose an idea. This idea can come from those public workshops where we went to and recorded all of the ideas, or online through our system. And then it only asks people 5 questions for the matter of simplicity. 5 questions such as, critique the idea based on these certain considerations, or rating the concept on different dimensions. And then to collect meaningful feedback, we provided the option of skipping questions if they wanted to. And then they can also submit their own ideas, give it a name, and add a picture for it. And at the end, they see a full set of ideas. They can repeat this process as many times as they want. So after deploying the tool in San Diego for 4 weeks, we received 352 contributions from 39 community members, which from the planning group we were working on was a huge win. And we interviewed people who participated, and they were like, I don't have time to go to workshops, so it provides opportunity to give feedback for me, and others praising about these 5 questions and how easy and straightforward it was to do. But the main contribution of this work to me were scaling and diversifying public participation and creating a complementary tool to public workshop that allowed meaningful input from public in a short amount of time, and connecting these small group who attend public workshop to a much larger group who can use technology to add their ideas to this. And then there are a lot of implications, again, on this work about how we can apply crowdsourcing in citizen sourcing, and like what are the differences, how can we basically build a tool in a way that is straightforward and easy to use, but also gather meaningful feedback from the public. But then, at the end, one of the feedback that we received from the planning group, which were comprised of community leaders, architects, were like, this is fantastic. This is a really nice tool, very clear UI, all of the comments are there, we can go to different proposals. But to be honest, we don't have time to go through all of these comments. And their ask was like, can you build a magic tool? We don't know what it is that, but we want a magic tool to see the pulse of community. And of course, what we did next was we built Community Pulse to show the pulse of community and to help them to analyze and utilize public input. This is another work from my former PhD student, Mahmoud Jassim, Inamul Haq, and Ali Sarqat. And it's a visual analytic tools for facilitating community input analysis. So the problem is beyond the urban planning group that we work with. In reality, and we've done another, very in-depth survey across the US with civic leaders grappling with analyzing community input, and it's all the same. The vast amount of community input through online platform enabled them to collect a large number of community input And while analyzing these input is vital for making democratic decisions, and they struggle to analyze them due to lack of time, analytical skills, and specialized tools. And I want to add that there are also inherent challenges of analyzing text data that makes it even more complex. One is the high dimensionality of text data in general, the lack of structure in this case when you don't have document but you have short free-form comments, the ambiguity, and all of these get intensifies in the civic domains when also people are using informal language. And also there is an unclear boundary between positive and negative opinion. And of course, HCI folks have been working on building solutions for analyzing public opinions. For example, Consider tool is a great example which helps civic conversation to stay focused by providing a pro and con list, which is visual and very straightforward. However, it's harder to analyze people's needs and priorities and issues in this pro-con list. And there are visual analytic tools like Conviz IT, which is very, very powerful in showing all of these opinion of the author and the topic and the sentiment. But as you can see through this picture, it's very much expert-centric, right? So with that, we built Community Pulse in a manner that is very easy for any civic leader who's not an expert in visual analytics to easily go through and see the pulse of community. So it has this overview which shows the number of proposal, which is again from community crit, so same data from actual community members, the key phrases, topic extraction, and so on. But most importantly, here's this interactive visualization, which is interactive and link. So anywhere you can click and interact with it. And we implemented an emotion classifier because all of the civic leaders we talked about, they said, we don't want sentiment analysis. It doesn't make sense for us. We want something beyond that. We want to see the reaction of people. Do they hate it? Do they love it? Why do they hate it? And so on. And we basically build a transformer-based BERT model to basically show all of these emotions here. And then we ran a study with civic leaders, and not surprisingly, all of them started by filtering based on angry comments. And again, non-surprisingly, the roundabout was the first proposal that most people hated, because people have a lot of problems around building roundabouts. And then if they click on those angry bar comments, they get to see the detailed comments. So basically provides at a glance an overview of emotions and reactions of people, but they can also dig down and drill down to see what are those comments, where are they coming from, why they're angry, or why they're happy with it. And then again, implications of this work was exactly extracting community reactions rather than sticking to sentiment analysis, having this multifaceted exploration of community input from this overview to detail, to be able to even verify and validate those, and to support tech unsavvy domain experts, which came up over and over in our interviews. So to wrap up, I wanted to bring this work very quickly, which is a multi-year work, or perhaps better to mention maybe around 5 years it took us to come up with this open civic framework. And this was an attempt based on all of our efforts in building community-centered tools to come up with a theoretical framework to say, if you're a technologist, here's how you can perhaps start with building technology. And in order to build that, we looked at previous frameworks in spaces of public participations and design thinking and crowdsourcing, and we combined them all together to basically come up with this framework. And basically, we use our tools that we built and showcase in our evaluation, showcase success in terms of talking about where you provide support in in-person meetings, where you can provide support in an online manner for people to gather idea, and how you can provide support for analyzing all of this together. So this was a wrap-up of the project I wanted to go through. But in terms of future vision, a significant portion of our research has concentrated on encouraging communities to prioritize the creation of healthy places, like these healthy community placemaking, walkable, bikeable neighborhoods, and so on. And recently, we have extended our research to encompass the development of healthy communities, ranging from studying the impact of COVID-19 on small town communities to thinking about, how we can build AI and chatbots for Parkinson's disease patients and so on. But then I aspire to further broaden our research scope to encompass more extensive topics that can further advance democracy, equity, well-being, and sustainability by including tech-oriented approaches for fostering healthier planet. And thinking about critical areas of HCI, such as UN Sustainable Development Plans in health, poverty, education, and sustainability. And with that, I want to invite you to join us in making this vision by collaboration, vision happen. So we are also venturing to more work, investigating critical views on inclusive and responsible visualization. For example, how does visualization influence societal perception, decision-making process, and the construction of knowledge? For example, in this work, we, for the first time, argued that the analytical orientation in current text visualization leaves less attention for accounting for the political nature of civic text visualization. And with all the surveys and results that we showcased, we came up and proposed 5 different conceptual dimensions, each discussing 2 different poles that challenges the overall analytical orientation by discussing design choices. For example, what it means to design tools to address the complexity of the problem on one hand, and what it means to also imagine inclusivity. Those people who are not tech savvy, are we leaving them by bringing so much complexity? And sometimes complex problems need complex solution, but we need to always think about this balance, right? Or what it means to aggregate data, which usually leads to marginalization versus articulations. And we discuss all of these different poles in this work. And we're also venturing to integrate AI by asking questions like, how can AI be harnessed for positive social impact in context of community and development and environmental sustainability? For example, in this project, our theory is called community bots. And it's a chatbot community that talks with the community member to elicit rich and multifaceted data around different facets of their life and how it has been impacted by COVID. And our thesis, our idea here was, if you can mimic the way that people talk to experts with chatbot, and they can consider there is a chatbot that is expert in work, and there's a chatbot that is expert to health, you can connect, you can gather more rich data, which are data and our analysis basically supported this hypothesis. And then how can we create engaging and accessible data communication methods to actively engage community with very complex matters beyond the traditional approaches of visualizations and technology? For example, in this work, in Rising Emotions, we combine data physicalizations and art installation to show the public feelings about the sea level rise, which is happening very soon in East Boston. And we basically survey East Boston residents about their feeling towards this happening in their neighborhood. We color-coded their emotions. And with the help of community members, so these colors, you see those colorful ribbons, are actual data points from the public. And with the help of public members, our team installed this art installation in front of the East Boston Library, which is a very visible place for the community, but also a gathering place for the community of East Boston. And we had an opening exhibition in December 2020, which brought people from the city to speak. We brought scientists from UMass Boston to talk about climate change and flooding effect. And it proved to be successful in increasing engagement and awareness around climate change issues. And I'd like to continue working on this work. I actually brought this postcards, not perhaps for all of you, but feel free to gather some, which talks about the project and adds more detail about what we did in this work. And then after that, I started thinking about, okay, this was really great, but how can we build technology to bring awareness about these difficult matters of climate change, especially with those underserved communities? And in this recent work, my postdoc and a group of robotics researchers at Cornell developed and evaluated a first of its kind communal extended reality, because it happens during a bus tour. When we had the community in a bus tour and wearing those head-mounted augmented reality headset to see the future of their neighborhood, basically in the city. And our result exemplifies that geolocated virtual reality can be a powerful tool to motivate innovation and collective actions. And this was a first of its kind empirical contribution showing that this sort of community extended reality, where you bring community together to see and discuss all of these impacts together, can inspire actions. And based on that, the project that I'm currently undertaking at Radcliffe is an extension of that, thinking about making it even a more low barrier technology. What if we build a web-based augmented reality and then we integrate it with situated visualization so that people can just walk around the neighborhood, scan this QR code from our platform, walk around and see the sea level rise and what's happening in East Boston. And through those visualization slider, they can see through different years. So make it as tangible and as easy and low barrier as possible to empower the community, especially those underserved ones who don't have the luxury and time to see and explore these problems, to become part of climate discourse and action plans. And I want to acknowledge that these projects were all collaborative efforts. Thank my amazing mentors, collaborators, and fantastic students at UMass and beyond. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, yeah, we have a few moments for questions, feedback, comments. What I'd like to kick off with is a question of the distinction between being heard and feeling heard. So scaling participation generally does, in sort of a statistical sense, mean that you can be heard, right? You know, there
Absolutely.
are graphs that say this many people agree or disagree or anything like that. And but it doesn't necessarily mean that you feel heard, right? Like, I think this was sort of the implication of, you're just having us do opinion surveys.
Absolutely.
It seems to me like feeling heard is often a feature of a kind of expensive, quote unquote, thing for, say, the policymaker to do, which is like, I sat here and listened to you for 20 minutes or 5 minutes, or you gave your comment. So I'm wondering about if there are ways to, if we're leaving this notion of feeling heard behind, and if there are ways that these kinds of systems that you're developing might let us feel both ways, right?
Fantastic question. Thank you so much. This was definitely a question we were asking even during the community CRIT project, that people felt empowered because they didn't have another channel, another way to bring their ideas, but definitely being heard is where they see their ideas and comments are actually implemented in the policy. And to that note, I need to say that's another wicked problem, because we've been working very hard to connect with community, to connect with government officials, to town officials, to make sure that all of these comments and valuable, inputs that we gather from the community gets actually implemented. But it's a really, really messy process. For example, in Community Crit, the planning group were very, very excited about the work they did with us. And they wrote a long, plans afterwards based on all of these and submitted to the city. To be honest, I left because I just got a job at UMass Amherst, and we didn't follow up much of how much of it actually changed. And circulating this back to the community and saying that, okay, from those very, very idealistic plans that our urban planners or architects had at the first, now we're changing to these plans that the community wanted collectively. It really, we've been looking for new PhD students to basically, I call it the later phase of the decision-making process. It's like first to engage them, to bring them in different ways from online to in-person, and then finally, and it's the idea that Open Civics talks about, how can we bring community to also help civic leaders in prioritizing, making those plans to actually feel and be heard. So that's a whole extensive project, but absolutely great question. Ask me difficult questions.
So when you're talking about scaling generally, I feel like there's also no tension with UN community.
Sorry, what was your?
Yeah.
Can you repeat your?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, when you do a lot of when you're talking about scale, there's often a contention with UN community. Right? So how have you thought about reconciling that difference and trying to do this scaling and try to reach a bunch of different communities,
yes,
but at the same time making sure that anything that you build is specific and niche for the needs of the specific people that you're doing.
Absolutely, great question. Great question. Yes, definitely. It's very important for you, especially when you're doing this online engagement, to understand where the community is coming from. Are they the one who want to rally the powerful group that were always engaged and again are coming to this online space to rally for their ideas because they have more power, they're more technology oriented? Or are you also hearing from those underserved community? In Community Crit, for example, we were very concerned because this, the intersection was between a very affluent neighborhood versus a Chicano neighborhood. And we had conversation. We went to personally meet the Chicano leader, which was part of the original workshop, and he stood up and he said, you have a lot of plans for a community, but we are not part of it. We love to be part of the design, and they were very afraid of gentrifications and so on. There were a lot of tension between them. So we went to meet them and we said, what your community think about online participation? And he said, we love it. Because we usually go to these meetings, we provide our feedback, nobody hears us, so we love, and more than 90% of us have access to smartphone. We love to have it. But then first step is making sure that they are aware and engaged, and they bring their ideas. And the next is the point that Michael raised. How do you ensure that basically their comments are heard? In another effort at Amherst, we actually listed a cross-section of the community, and especially those who are harder to engage, from youth to homeless to senior people to BIPOC to other. And we usually translate anything that is on website for different community members. Where we were in San Diego, we translated in Spanish. In Amherst, we translated in Chinese, Spanish, and Farsi, and we really try to come up with understanding who's our local community and how we can reach out to them. We even went to farmers market. We had surveys on iPad asking people. We have surveys on paper, and so many other ways to ensure that people and community are aware of what we're doing, and we're doing this for the benefit of them. Great question. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks so much for coming in and sharing your work with us. I think my question is, it seems to me like a lot of your work is targeted at making like the political process more accessible to more like voices and giving like having more people able to express their voices. And I think when I'm thinking about like some of the problems that plague our political process, I see like people not having a voice is one of them, but I see another problem of some voices just being heard more, like louder than, like mattering more than other people's voices. And I'm wondering whether you see technology as having a role, or whether there is a role for technology in solving the latter problem, where some people are simply like listened to more than other people. Or whether you see your work as addressing that problem at all.
Absolutely. That's a very well-known problem in online space, right? And a lot of critique on any civic online process has been just like ranking and liking process, which basically gives privilege to more popular opinion. And those opinions that are less popular get marginalized. They don't even get read or... So in a recent work that I didn't present here, it's called Serendize, short for serendipitous analysis. We built this bias mitigation model, which unlike any recommendation system that recommend any piece of text that you have already seen or anything you have already seen, it recommends anything that you haven't seen. And with that, it tries to mitigate the effect of going through some popular or like biasing towards some specific notion of, and it's for text analysis. So that's one way, but that's a really, really big problem and hard problem. In community pulse, interestingly, we weren't thinking about this. Well, one of the civic leaders who went through and spent like 2 weeks with community pulse analyzing the data said, hey, I noticed this anonymous user 44, is the one who brings a lot of angry comments about roundabout. So that was a way of detecting anomalies as well, like who's also rallying. It's harder when it's anonymous to basically account for who's coming from and making sure that we are getting this cross, section of the community and so on. And that's the conversation that I recently had with, gosh, I'm lacking on the name, on anonymity and what are the proxies that you can basically build into these sort of anonymous technology to at least like understand that these are coming from a specific community intersection.
All right. Noting the time, if you have further feedback for Narges, I suggest either using your iClicker or coming to speak to her as we wrap. So please thank the speaker one more time.